the exception of water, no drinking. Please keep your arms and legs inside the shuttle. And for your safety, please remain seated at all times while the shuttle's in motion. If you're standing up to take a picture, you better look and change seats or anything. Please stay seated while we're waiting. We're going 3.7 miles to the top of the road. Round trip about 45 minutes if you stay on board. 9 shuttles.
You all right, Dad?
Yes. It's just a knee again.
Just a few more yards. Oh. Whew. Boy, what a view.
Uh-huh.
And the silence. You can shout. It all just gets swallowed up. Hey! Do you even like it here?
What?
Do you like the desert at all?
Well, I wouldn't mind some green grass and some trees or some change of seasons.
Why have you spent 20 years in a place you don't like?
Your mother liked it.
That's no answer.
What do you mean?
She's been dead for 10 years. So what's keeping you here?
Fremd bin ich eingezogen, fremd zieh ich wieder aus.
I know that line.
Ja, Schubert, die Winterreise.
What does it mean again?
The stranger I arrive, the stranger I depart. You know that much German. Fremd bin ich eingezogen, fremd zieh ich wieder aus. Was soll ich länger weilen, dass man mich trieb hinaus?
I guess you could say that I grew up in the safest of all worlds. My father was a furniture salesman, my mother a violist with the St. Louis Symphony. All in all, it was a good childhood, a normal childhood. My father spoke to my mother tucked me in at night, my brother and I played with each other when we weren't fighting. And yet, I sensed there was also another world that remained hidden and secretive. My grandparents, my uncle and aunts, all missing, so much not there. When I asked my father where all my family had gone, the answer was brief. They died in the war. I knew my parents were immigrants and that we were German. The other kids in school would always remind me when they called me a Kraut. And, well, there had been a war in Germany, so that sort of explained matters. I was 10 years old when I first traveled to Europe. My dad wanted us to see the old country and the city of Oldenburg where he grew up. We peered through the windows, hoping to be the first to glimpse the beautiful family house my father had described for us so many times. But he went slower and slower, as if he had lost his way.
George? George, are you okay?
And suddenly he shuddered and swung the steering wheel violently to the left, nearly plowing us into a streetcar, and raced back to the Autobahn, speeding east towards Bremen. "I can't," he said softly, over and over. "I'm sorry. I just can't." What are you doing, Dad?
Quails. Too many quails around here. Quälgeister.
What does that mean?
Bad spirits. So we are filming, are we?
Yeah, I thought you wouldn't mind.
What do you want to know? Hello. I'm George Goldsmith. I'm a boring old man
Who used to be a musician,
who used to be a musician.
and who used to be Gunther Goldschmidt.
Uh-huh.
That's what I'd like to talk about.
I see.
Where are you going?
Wo hab ich denn diese verfluchten Pillen?
Your pills? Well, they're usually on the table.
Ja, ja. Ja.
So, you remember that trip we took to Germany back in 61?
62.
Right, 62. I always felt like I missed out on something. You were going to show us your hometown.
Oldenburg.
Right, but something happened.
Did it?
Yes, it did. You were going to show us so many things.
Yeah.
George, are you okay? George?
Well, I thought we could go there again.
Again?
Yeah. Let's say we're on the Autobahn. We take the exit. Where do we end up?
Okay. Let me see. Then you turn right and you get into die Gartenstraße.
That was your family home.
Ja, Gartenstraße 34.
So beautiful. I remember you used to tell us about the, what was it, the Anemone Kingdom?
Come with me. Yes, this is the gardens of Oldenburg Castle. Das Anemonenreich. That's where we were playing, my sister and I. The park was our little kingdom, away from the adults. Freedom, you know.
You were on top of the world.
Untouchable.
Tell me about your father.
My father, successful businessman, tough. He wanted to make a real man out of me, but I think he gave up on it quite early. But you know, he had seen a lot. He was in the war.
First World War.
Yeah. He must have been a good soldier. He survived, first of all,
So marschieren wir weiter für Kaiser und Vaterland.
but they also gave him das Eiserne Kreuz.
Gefreiter Goldschmidt, antreten. Wohlverdient, bitte.
Iron Cross, first class. He was very proud of that.
A Jew with an Iron Cross.
Yes, Martin, a Jew with an Iron Cross. But I was much closer to your grandmother. Very lively woman. She used to call me Gugo.
Gugo.
Günther Goldschmidt. Gugo.
Oh, Gugo. I like that. But why'd she call you that?
I don't know, she was like that. And she took me to the theater a lot. Oh, yes. That's the building. Das Oldenburgische Landestheater. This is where I decided to play the flute when I was 14 years old. We went there to see Mozart's opera, The Magic Flute. And my mother said, "You are going to see the most wonderful thing. It's a fairy tale with a prince who has to get a princess."
Tamino.
Yes, Tamino. And he has his magic flute to help him. Yes, and the first part is rather kid stuff. But then the story develops. He joins this brotherhood where all men are equal. Where it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, white or black.
Or Jewish.
Ah, forget about Jewish.
So you were able to sense all that Mozart was talking about.
Yes. It was all clear to me. The music made it absolutely clear. The whole mood, the hope, the ideals, great expectations. And that's when I decided for the flute and to be a musician.
Tamino, ein Königssohn, wandelt an der Pforte unseres Tempels. Diesen Tugendhaften zu bewachen, sei heute unsere wichtigste Pflicht.
Er besitzt Tugend,
Tugend,
auch Verschwiegenheit,
Verschwiegenheit,
ist wohltätig,
wohltätig. Haltet ihn für würdig, so folgt meinem Beispiel.
It seems that magic flute was a pretty big inspiration.
Oh, yeah. It sent me through the entire country to study the flute.
So you became a musician.
Oh, yes, I was very lucky to study with the famous Professor Spittel in Karlsruhe. He was the flute teacher par excellence. I was The Zauberlehrling.
Sauber.
Well, Zauber, how will you understand that?
Magic?
Yes, something like that. Yeah. But then I was called to his office one day, and I knew there was something wrong.
What?
Well, Dr. Professor Spittel was unshaved in his office of the Hochschule für Musik in Karlsruhe. Unshaved. If you can imagine, you know, it was the time of the Nürnberger Gesetze.
The Nuremberg laws.
Yes, the Jews were not real citizens of Germany anymore.
So this is 1935?
That's right.
Herr Professor,
Herr Goldschmidt. Ja. Danke, dass Sie so kurzfristig.
gerne.
Ja.
Go on.
Herr Goldschmidt.
Herr Goldschmidt,
Wie lange sind
you
Sie?
have been with us for almost 1.5 years.
Sie sind ein sehr begabter Student.
In that time, you have been a very good and attentive student.
Zeugen.
Your playing,
Es hat
simply
gesagt,
marvelous.
fein,
Very sweet and sensitive and
mir
musical.
eine große Freude.
And it would have been my pleasure, my great pleasure, to sign your degree and recommend you to any orchestra in Europe.
Vielen Dank, Herr Professor.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Aber das will leider nicht so kommen, Herr Goldschmidt.
Bitte?
But you will not graduate?
Gestern Nachmittag
Yesterday afternoon, I was informed in no uncertain terms
zügig verlassen müssen.
that you must leave the academy
Jetzt
now
und ohne Abschluss.
and without a degree.
Ach so?
Ja. So ist die Lage.
So I said,
Kann man da nicht noch was machen?
isn't there a way? Isn't there something you can do? And then he explained that he was in a bad way himself. His wife was half Jewish, and he was very, very sorry. So that was it. I was out. And I think that same day I decided to leave the country. Was soll ich länger weilen, dass man mich trieb hinaus? Lass ihre Hunde heulen vor ihres Herrn Haus.
So that means
Well, it means, why should I stay here longer when I'm driven out? Let angry dogs bark in front of their master's house.
But you must have seen it coming.
What do you mean?
You read the newspapers. I'm sure you weren't sitting around playing Mozart all the time. You must have seen it coming.
I never considered myself a Jew.
Dad, your name is Goldschmidt. Your grandfather's name was Moses Goldschmidt. Your great-grandfather was Levi Goldschmidt. You're as Jewish as gefilte fish.
I'm not a fish.
Hello, Dad.
Yeah?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Listen, I found something today. You remember you said you never really thought of yourself as a Jew? Remember that? Dad?
Yes.
Well, look, I talked to someone at the Stadt Archive of Oldenburg.
Stadtarchiv Oldenburg.
Right. And they sent me some papers that indicate that you, Günther Ludwig Goldschmidt, had a bar mitzvah in the synagogue there in Oldenburg on April the 30th, 1926. Dad?
I don't remember anything about it.
What? What do you mean you... How... It's a bar mitzvah, for Christ's sake. You prepare it for months. They give you presents. You stand up and read from the Torah in front of the entire congregation. It's a big honkin' deal. Right?
If they say I did, I did. But I just can't remember.
Oh, Jesus, Dad. Sometimes it just doesn't make any sense.
Well, there are so many things that don't make any sense.
All right. I'm sorry I called so late at night.
Yes.
I mean, it's even laid out on your end.
That's okay.
I'm sorry, Dad.
Good night, Martin.
Good night.
Jetzt darf er los.
3 Jahre?
Und, hast du jetzt bei dem Klassentest?
Sieht doch gut aus.
Das dauert ja aber ewig. Das wäre
Hello?
Hi, Dad. It's me.
Martin?
Yes.
Are you investigating me? I don't like that you investigate me.
I'm not investigating you, Dad. I'm just looking. I'm looking for something. A family, you know? Some past. So I'm thinking of coming out there again. Maybe Saturday?
Again? It's 2,000 miles to get here. And it's very hot, too.
I don't mind the heat. It's just that when we're together, you remember more.
Was it sitting like this? Or?
Doesn't matter. What matters is that you try to remember.
I remember what's worth to be remembered.
Okay, fine. So, last time you said you had decided to leave Germany.
When?
1935.
Yeah. I was quite determined, yeah. I had friends in Sweden, and actually I managed to organize an apartment in Stockholm.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked forward to that. I mean, I always liked the idea of the North. I would have to begin with some odd jobs, but maybe I could continue with the fruits somehow or the other.
So you weren't worried?
No, I was young and confident, 21 years old.
You were 22.
22, okay.
Yep.
But then I was literally packing my suitcase when the telephone rang.
Ja?
Hallo, junger Mann, kommen Sie.
Ah.
Im Wohnzimmer, da.
Für mich, ja,
Da drüben.
danke.
Bitte schön.
Goldschmidt, hallo?
The man presented himself and he was calling from something
richtig.
called der Jüdische
dem sprechen Sie,
Kulturbund.
The Jewish Cultural League.
That's right.
Ach. Ah, ja, habe ich gehört. Jüdischer
And the guy was very friendly and said, we have a flutist here who is down with a bad cold, and could I maybe sit in for him for a concert in Frankfurt?
Heute Abend schon. Nein, morgen Abend.
What did you know about them?
Not
Ich
much.
schlug heute Abend.
I had heard about them, but I hadn't thought much about it. I wasn't interested in some club for the one-legged or the red-haired.
Ja, heute Abend wird schwierig. Und welches Stück?
But on the other hand, you know,
Ah, das ist eine schöne Partie. Das schaffe ich, da können Sie sicher sein.
when would I ever get the chance to play in an orchestra again?
Ich freue mich wirklich.
I thought, why not take that last job before I leave?
Wiederhören.
Bleiben Sie dann bei uns?
So I went. And it was all rather gloomy, you know, hostile. This was their only chance for a meal ticket, and they didn't like to see a newcomer. Oh, you're the new flutist. Welcome.
Not enough seats in the lifeboat.
No, and there were a lot of eyes on me. I thought, how I'm going to survive these people. But then they started playing, and I tell you, they played like angels. Magnificent.
What piece did you play?
Tchaikovsky's Pathétique.
One of your favorites?
Yeah.
You love that piece?
Yes, yes, I do.
I know you do.
And what's more, I immediately took notice of a viola player. A very pretty viola player. That was her mom.
Ah, yeah.
I knew it. All in one afternoon. I just had to stay.
Despite the danger, you wanted to leave the country.
Despite the danger. This was too good to leave.
Deutsche Männer und Frauen, das Zeitalter eines überspitzten jüdischen Intellektualismus ist nun zu Ende.
Yes?
It's me.
Oh, Martin.
Yeah. I took a closer look at that orchestra of
It
yours.
was not just an orchestra.
Yeah.
It was a big organization with opera and theater and cabaret. Hundreds of artists. It was all over the country.
I know. And you ask yourself, how is this possible?
What do you mean?
Well, we are talking about Nazi Germany here, and right in the middle of all of that, you've got this cultural league of German Jews.
Yeah, I told you.
And they advertise in the newspaper, and they make these big exhibitions and a big recruiting campaign. It almost looks like some kind of Hitlerjugend.
Hey, Martin.
Okay, I'm sorry, but you know what I mean? It's all a little bizarre, isn't it?
Not for us.
Not for you. Okay. Well, I looked into how this might happen. You had this director, right?
Yes,
Kurt Singer was his name?
that's correct.
You remember him?
Oh, yes. We were a bit frightened of him. He was the big man, you know.
And before the Nazis came along, he was running the City Opera of Berlin. But then he got fired.
Like all of us did.
Yeah, but what does he do? Well, he writes a letter to this Nazi bureaucrat, a man called Hans Hinkel.
Oh, yeah.
And he was a commissar in the Prussian Ministry of Culture. But, you know, that was just local government. And he really wanted to get closer to the action.
Wir haben ein deutsches Theater, einen deutschen Film, eine deutsche Presse, ein deutsches Schrifttum.
He'd been a loyal Nazi from early on, and he wanted to be a part of all the new things that were happening, you know? He wanted Goebbels' attention, and he wanted to go to his Ministry of Propaganda.
Yeah.
And this is where you could really move forward, but he needed some kind of vehicle for his career. And suddenly, Kurt Singer walks in the door with a proposal for this Jewish Cultural League. This is just brilliant. Hinkel can run all the Jewish artists under his command, and he can say to Goebbels, look, this is great. We can show the whole world that Germany is treating its Jews well. You see?
Oh, yes.
We can say, look, we're giving them opera, we're giving them theater. What's the big deal? So Singer, he's the perfect tool for getting all that started. And it seems these two guys get on very well. It's a very strange alliance, but a huge opportunity for both of them.
We knew that.
You knew they were pulling the strings.
I guess so.
And how did that feel?
Martin, we were young musicians. We only wanted to play, you know. What can I say?
The organization that my parents had joined, the Jüdische Kulturbund, was an immediate success. When the plans were made public, more than 50,000 people applied for membership, and Dr. Singer was able to attract more than 2,000 artists to entertain the all-Jewish audience with concerts, theater, opera, and even cabaret. German composers and playwrights were declared off-limits by the Gestapo, but nevertheless Singer announced that this would be the chance for the Jews of Germany to show their cultural value to the country. The Kulturbund opened its doors on October 1st, 1933, and a few weeks later it staged its first opera, Mozart's sparkling Marriage of Figaro. There is a moment in Figaro that I think encapsulates what the Jews must have felt as their rights as citizens began slipping away. The Countess Almaviva mourns her husband's infidelity. Where are the lovely moments of sweetness and pleasure we used to share? Where have the promises gone that came from those lying lips? The Countess declares that she remains faithful and hopes that her still devoted love for the Count will change his ungrateful behavior. Such hope. It breaks your heart. So you were able to, block it all out and just focus on the music. That's amazing.
Well,
Weren't you?
you know, there's a moment that stays with me.
Tell me.
It must have been in Frankfurt. Yes, definitely. In Vereinshaus. And I think we were playing the Rustic Wedding by Goldmark, you know.
Very romantic.
Yes, very popular. As we are tuning up, two Gestapo men come in.
They were watching you.
Yes, always there. But this time they had brought 2 guests and the hall was full, sold out. 2 seats missing. So what did they do? They took an elderly couple and simply kicked them out. We saw these old people being dragged and kicked up to the exit. And then, bitteschön, the Rustic Wedding.
How'd you like the performance, Dad?
It was all right.
So, back then in Germany, what were you thinking?
Oh, I guess I thought, try as they might, this culture can't keep reality out. And later on, your mother and I were going home on the tram, and she talked a lot about it. She couldn't forget the old lady. The way she had been fending for her husband, you know, trying to protect him from the blows.
Yeah, Mom was like that.
It was a kind of important moment for us. Because she said, it's an inspiration, Günther. We must always protect each other from evil things. Promise me.
And what did you say?
I said, it's all right, we have to just stick it out and everything will be fine again. We'll get our country back.
Seems like you were growing closer all the time.
Yeah, I guess so. New Year's Eve was coming and we decided to spend it all by ourselves. Outside of Frankfurt in the Taunus Mountains. Beautiful place. You just take the tram and you're there where everything is how it should be. And we booked ourselves into this little guest house. There was no electricity. There must have been some kind of blackout.
Ihnen erscheint es rätselhaft und geheimnisvoll, was That's when we made love for the first time, Martin. That was fantastic.
Okay, too much information.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
So this was the beginning of 1938?
Yes. Will you hand me the water?
That was a really bad year.
Yes, but we didn't know yet.
There had been some years of relative quiet, but in 1938, matters took a decided turn for the worse. For the Jews in general, but also for the Kulturbund. In March, Hitler invaded Austria and made it part of the German Reich. And within days, orders came from the Gestapo that now all Austrian composers, such as Haydn, Mozart, Schubert, had now been added to the list of forbidden artists. Later that year, my parents were on a train out of Frankfurt. Their branch of the Kulturbund had closed down because more and more artists and audience members were leaving the country, having endured enough harassment and suspecting that things would only get worse. My grandparents in Oldenburg had been forced to sell their beautiful house and were now trying to cope in a modest block of flats by the railway. But for my mom and dad, 1938 was the beginning of a great adventure. They were being transferred to the big city where everything was happening and where they were going to play with the best musicians in the country. They were going to Berlin. So where do you live in Berlin?
I'm not far from the theater. In the Prinzenstraße.
Nice place.
Well, it was one of those Mietskasernen.
Meets?
Mietskasernen, like what they built for the poor people all over Berlin.
Ah.
You would walk through this labyrinth of backyards.
Mm-hmm.
First you pass this bicycle repairman, then there is a little printer shop in the next yard, and behind all that we had our little apartment in the darkest corner, you know.
Yeah.
But it was fine. We fixed it up. Your mother made some curtains, and it was really quite neat.
You were happy with what you had?
Yes, we were happy. We were fine. And there was the landlord, quite a character. Herr Kohn. He had many funny ideas. He would store coal in our bathroom so that we could hardly get in.
Coal?
But he was fine, very nice man, always very nice and helpful. And one day I noticed he had this suitcase ready and packed in one of his rooms, and I asked him, why do you keep a suitcase in your living room all the time? And he says, just a few things I want to take along when the Gestapo comes for me.
Wow.
And I said, what are you talking about? And he says, haven't you heard? Haven't you heard? Don't you know? We'll all be burned. And I said, come on. Those are rumors. This is fairy tales. And he just looked at me with a kind of very solemn expression. Very little skinny man. And he says, you'll remember Adolf Kohn.
When my parents joined the Kulturbund in Berlin, it was still keeping up standards, with star personalities attracting the remaining audience. But there had been complaints from high up in the Nazi regime that the repertoire of the Kulturbund was too Aryan and not really Jewish. Too much Shakespeare and Molière, too much Ravel and Sibelius. And now Hinkle decreed that the organization could only continue so long as it restricts itself to the cultivation of Jewish artistic life. Kurt Singer had no choice but to follow Herr Hinkel's directive, but he did his best to put a positive gloss on the new situation. He began to stage Yiddish language plays based on Jewish village life in Poland and Russia, and he declared, "We shall reclaim a new spiritual land for ourselves, and we shall seek it out and greet it with a Jewish melody in our hearts."
Na, jetzt wird's aber interessant, ne?
Das können die doch nicht ernst meinen.
But both the staff and the audience were utterly German. They spoke only German, and they had little desire to explore what they saw as a distant and backward peasant culture somewhere in Russia.
Was ist das denn?
Das ist doch Jiddisch. Verstehst du ein Wort davon? Nein, das ist ja pures Kauderwelsch.
So this is 1938?
You're probably right.
Tell me about the 9th of November.
Why would I remember the 9th of November?
I think you do.
Do I?
Yeah.
On that day. On that day, I was alone. Your mother was with her parents. I missed her, of course. But in a kind of cozy way, you know, maybe I also enjoyed to be on my own a little bit. So I was playing Telemann, the fantasies, fine little pieces and good practice.
Günther. Herr Kohn?
Günther, machen Sie auf. Sie müssen raus.
That was the landlord, and he was all out of breath, and he said, "Get out." I said, "What do you mean? Get your things and get out of here now. There's a riot. It's the brown shirts. They are smashing things and burning things."
Raus.
Just run
Raus.
now.
Schnell!
So, you went out on the street?
No. There was a back alley. But I still saw a group of men hunting for Jews. And I thought I'd go and hide in the park there. There was a park close by. But it took forever to get there, and the suitcase was heavy.
Halt! Stehen bleiben!
Da hinten noch mehr! Hier rüber!
So, sitting there, I thought, do I know anyone in Berlin that I can trust? I mean, no. Should I go home to Oldenburg? No, I want to see Rosemary. I want to be with her now. So now I had to catch a train to Düsseldorf.
Düsseldorf?
Yeah. take a break.
So you took a train clear across Germany on Kristallnacht.
That's right.
Go on.
That doesn't matter.
Matters to me.
Look, nothing really happened to me. I was lucky.
I'd like to know.
I saw the fire.
The fire?
I saw the synagogue burning in Hanover as we were passing through. Then I guess I fell asleep.
You fell asleep?
What do you expect? I was exhausted. Anyhow, next morning the conductor wakes me up. We are in Düsseldorf. I had not too much to walk to her parents' house. And it was mayhem. Knoblauch.
So that was your beloved Germany.
No, that was the Nazis, Martin.
Oh, come on. Who wasn't a Nazi by then? They were the Germans. You were the Jew.
Naja.
Das muss ja schlimm sein, Emma. Seit wann bist du denn ein Judenfreund, meine Liebe? Ja, das wundert mich jetzt aber auch. Das haben die doch verdient.
Anyway, I get to the house, beautiful villa in the suburbs. Your grandfather was an important man in Düsseldorf, running his own music academy.
Another musician.
That's right.
And I ring the door, all devastated and miserable, and he comes out. Oh, Günther, was für eine schöne Überraschung. What a pleasant surprise. We were just having our morning rehearsal. Do come in and get some breakfast, and we shall continue.
Amazing.
And I said, excuse me, sir, but, haven't you heard what's been going on? Have you seen the streets? Aren't you afraid? And he said, of what? Of a few drunken idiots? Of course not. Anyway, in my house, music comes first. So, Günther, your flute, here's your score, slow movement, and we started to play.
What piece did you play?
Beethoven's Serenade in D major.
Dad, listen.
Yeah.
I found out what happened to your father on November the 9th.
Yes?
Remember you were sitting on that bench in Berlin thinking about going to Oldenburg?
That's right.
Well, it would have been a very different story. They arrested your father. They marched him through the streets. They sent him to the Sachsenhausen concentration camp. Held him for a month before letting him go. They beat him.
I know. I know. That's what I told you. I was lucky. I was always very, very lucky. I must remember to tell you about Schwartz.
Schwartz?
Rudolf Schwartz. Our conductor. Amazing man. Not much older than ourselves, and with such a commitment to the job. He had no illusions either.
So, he didn't believe the Kulturbund would save any Jews?
No. He said, meine Damen und Herren, ladies and gentlemen, I know that many of you have lost family members in the last weeks, and some of you will leave us soon. So I just want to thank for your heroic effort this last month, and to remind you that it is greatly appreciated, not least by the audience. What we do here is obviously important to a great many people, and may I say, to ourselves. So let us play Gustav Mahler's music in all its strength and color and nobility, as if your lives depended on it.
So that inspired you?
Oh, yes. I remember thinking, this is why I perform. This is what I'm meant for. And then, of course, the war broke out. And we were euphoric.
Really?
Oh, yes. With both Britain and France against Hitler, we were sure he was going to lose in a matter of months. We were sure about that. We didn't give up. We just kept playing.
Ach, Mensch, der Vorhang.
Ja, ich mach das. So, ja.
Gut, weit, 3, 4.
So we had a pretty good time with our friends, playing music together, arguing, having fun. Oh, bicycle trips. It was a big thing. We loved to bike in the outskirts of Berlin. So we spent a lot of time planning that and arguing over which route was the best. We could still do that. But then it got so late that we missed the curfew. And that was the tricky part. As you probably know, Jews were not allowed in the streets after 8 p.m.
So basically you had to sneak home.
That's right.
You know, Dad, when I was a kid, I used to have this recurring dream. It's funny, you know, because how could I know? But somehow, I was dreaming of Berlin at night during the war, during those blackouts. And I saw you and Mom on the street late at night, and I would call out to warn you, get off the streets. Get off the streets. It's not safe. It's not safe.
It's interesting.
What would you have answered if you heard me?
That we were okay. We were okay. It was okay. Sometimes you have to take a risk for what you love.
Yes. Hitler was winning on the battlefields, and the Nazi regime seemed to grow only more confident and diabolical in its harassment of the Jews. After more than 7 years of making music and theater under the direst conditions, the artists of the Kulturbund were beginning to buckle under the strain.
Fräulein, halten Sie doch still, bitte, so kann ich nicht arbeiten.
Fewer and fewer plays and concerts were scheduled, and while management tried to lift everyone's spirits by launching a number of light-hearted cabarets, the backstage conversations were dominated by one single subject: how to get out now.
Habt ihr gehört? Die Camilla hat das Visum bekommen.
Da kann ich vielleicht nächstes Jahr die Czardas-Fürstin spielen, wenn die raus ist.
Und ich die Gräfin Maritza.
Ich bitte euch Mädels, das ist doch nur Zuckerpapier. Davon kommt ihr nie wieder los.
So what were you thinking?
About what?
About leaving.
It was getting a bit tight. It was over. We had to get out. Your mother was quite clear about that. With Hitler winning the war, we had to get out.
I guess that could only be America.
It could only be America. Well, in one way, it was a good thing that we kept playing this chamber music. You know, we went often to this lawyer called Lehmann because he had a piano.
Yeah.
And one day, lo and behold, we are invited to come and play with him at the Embassy of the United States. Now, do you realize what that meant? People were storming that place, beleaguering it day and night to be let in. And there we were, just two kids, walking right past the lines and straight into paradise.
Wow.
Everybody was smiling and laughing, and you could go to the buffet and eat as much as you wanted. And we looked around, two little sparrows, you know, not speaking a word of English. Just wondering who would be able to help us, who could get us that visa.
Look, Jerry, you're the young musicians who entertained us by the canopy. Great kids. Very talented.
There was this employee, Mrs. Schneider, who took a liking to us.
What do you say, Joe? Shouldn't I have a word with Counselor?
And to cut the long story short, she was able to fix it.
And you didn't have any doubts about leaving? Leaving the Kulturbund?
Martin, we knew it was over. It was over.
So at this point, you were ready to leave?
Not quite. Not quite. I had to go to Prinz Albrechtstraße.
Prinz Albrechtstraße?
Yeah, that's right. Gestapo headquarters in Berlin.
Oh dear.
And then I went in and my raincoat was soaking and my shoes were wet. So I was dripping rain on the white marble floor. And I came to the desk with this SS officer, skull and crossbones and everything. And before I could say anything, he went, "Verfluchte Judenschwein! Was hat er mit seinen Drecksfüßen und den ganzen Boden versaut?"
Wow. You thought you screwed the whole thing up, huh?
Yes, that's right. And after it seemed like 10 minutes, he suddenly let a stamp fly all over the papers.
And so?
And so he went, "Get out of here with your dirty Jewish feet!"
That must have stayed with you a long time.
Yes, never left me. It was awkward, because we couldn't tell anybody we were leaving. You didn't want any attention to that. So we sat rehearsing the program for the next season. We sat there preparing a performance that we would never take part in.
What were you rehearsing?
Well, Rudolf Schwarz had talked about playing for our lives. But this time he introduced to us a symphony by Carl Nielsen, and it was number 4.
Have you got it?
Oh. Oh, yes. He knew exactly what he was doing by choosing that piece. It was all about our own situation.
Yeah?
Yes. Nielsen wrote it during the First World War, which made him very depressed. His whole world had collapsed, It was the apocalypse. And Schwarz must have seen that we were heading the same way too.
So it was about your own destruction?
Yeah. We knew it was the end.
The end of the Jews.
The end of everything, Martin. Everything.
Then the point of the music, you know, of Nielsen's symphony, is that there will always be music, even if we are all gone. Music is like life itself, and life will always continue, no matter what happens to us.
And that was supposed to be a comfort?
Yes. I guess that's what Schwartz was thinking.
Okay, that's pretty drastic. So Schwartz had actually given up all hope of survival, and all you could do was to accept that destiny for the sake of music?
Yes.
But actually you and Mom were leaving, right?
Yes, we were leaving.
You were young. You didn't want to die. Not even for music.
No, not even for music.
On June 1st, 1941, my mom and dad, each of them carrying a single suitcase and the equivalent of $4 in their pockets, boarded a special train in downtown Berlin. Its windows had been painted black so that no one could see either in or out. This refugee train made its way through France and into Spain, where they were connected to Lisbon and finally a boat to New York City. Early in the morning of June 21st, my father roused my mother from her sleep so that the two of them could catch the earliest possible glimpse of the Statue of Liberty. They had made it. They were safe.
Oh, na sowas. Schau mal, Walter, wie schön. Es schneit. Der Winter kommt aber früh dieses Jahr. Allzu früh. Na gut, dann ist es eben so.
My parents had gotten out of Germany just in time. Less than 3 months later, in September 1941, the Kulturbund was dissolved by the Gestapo from one day to the next. Now that Germany was at war with the whole world anyway, the Kulturbund was no longer useful as a propaganda tool. What came instead was the final solution, the extermination of the Jews of Europe. The Kulturbund was no more, its instruments confiscated, the members who remained sent to the camps. So, America, how was your arrival here?
Well, you know, we both had the sort of menial jobs at first.
Mm-hmm.
Your mother worked as a domestic for a while, cleaning other people's houses. And I got a factory job. I would fix these old zippers, polish them on a wheel, so that they could be used again in new trousers. But then your mother auditioned for the St. Louis Symphony, and she was offered a contract, and we moved to St. Louis. As you well know.
Yeah, well, great for her.
Yeah, pretty good.
And you?
Well, then we stayed there for 21 years, as you very well know.
But what about you? What about your life?
What about me?
Did you
What
ever
about-
audition for an orchestra?
No, I did not.
Why not?
I gave it up. That's what I did.
Yeah, you gave up. I think we all figured that out.
I sold books for a while, and then I joined that furniture store that you know.
Yeah, I know. I also know that you pretty much hated it.
Martin, I say this. I mean, what's the old saying? It's a living.
Yeah, sure it is, Dad, but how do you trade a living as a musician for that of a salesman?
Martin, someone had to bring home the bacon. Huh? As you very well know. Especially after your brother and you came along.
No. Don't blame Peter. Don't blame me. Because you wasted your life in America. You could have done something else, you know. You could have taught music. How could you sell furniture for 35 years, Dad? With those phony pep talks, the fucking sales meetings, all that bullshit. You hated every minute of it. And I can tell you, it was no goddamn day at the beach for us either. You know? 35 years. Why?
Walter.
God damn it. Is everything all right? Dad? Dad, you all right? Hey, you got me worried there for a minute. What's that?
Walter.
Over 300 million prizes, including a Dodge Viper.
Here we are.
What's that?
Some greetings from the family. I think you should read them.
Greetings from the family. They were some greetings, all right. 24 letters that my grandmother Tony wrote, and 6 letters from my grandfather and my father's younger brother Helmut. My grandmother's letters were nearly all very sweet and supportive, expressing her joy and pride that my parents were starting a new life in the new world. And she maintained an inexhaustible hope that the family would somehow be reunited in America. "Oh, my children, will something so wonderful still come to pass for us?" she wrote. My grandfather and Uncle Helmut had also attempted to flee to America, with the hope of bringing the rest of the family later, but their ship was turned away and returned to Europe. They spent the next 3 years in French detention camps, and the tone of the letters from there was markedly different. My grandfather was fearful and sick, having lost more than a quarter of his body weight, and he pleaded ever more desperately for help. In his last letter, he wrote, "My dear Günther and Rosemary, I have described our situation for you several times. This will be the last time. If you don't move heaven and earth to help us, that's up to you. But it will be on your conscience." A few months later, my father's entire family was gone. They had all been sent to the camps in Eastern Europe. None of them returned. You okay, Dad?
Yes. I forgot to water some of the oleander.
Yeah. I'm afraid they're gone.
How could I forget them? This was never happened to your mother.
It's okay, Dad. They'll be back. Don't worry.